The council chamber was cold and filled with the sound of quiet breathing. A dozen alien delegates sat in their crystal seats, their faces hidden under pale light. In the center of the floor stood a small human girl, bare feet, torn clothes, her wrists bound by a silver band that hummed with energy. Her eyes, though red from crying, still carried that stubborn spark every species in the galaxy had learned to fear. They said she had broken a sacred law. They said she was dangerous, but she was only 12. The lead counselor, a tall creature with skin like molten glass, lifted his staff. For violating the ban of planetary weapons, the sentence is death. His voice echoed through the chamber like ice cracking. In the shadows near the door, something moved, small, dark, silent. No one noticed it until the girl lifted her head. Her voice trembled. "Don't do this!" the creature beside the counselor hissed. "You have no right to speak." But then, a low growl filled the hall, deep, guttural, wrong for such a small space. Every alien eye turned toward the sound. From between the armored guards stepped a honey badger wearing a small collar of metal and light. Its eyes glowed blue, reflecting the council's torches. It walked right up to the human child. The guards raised their weapons, but before they could fire, the creature snarled, a single sound that made half the delegates step back. The girl whispered, "You came." The badger stopped beside her and faced the council. Its armor plates shifted with a faint hum, a design not alien but unmistakably human. Someone had built this thing with love and fury. The lead counselor tried to hide his fear. "Remove the creature." A guard took one step forward. That was his last. The badger launched forward with terrifying speed. Metal cracked. A scream followed. The guard's weapon shattered like glass, and his body hit the far wall before anyone could blink. Chaos erupted. The girl fell to the floor, covering her head as bolts of plasma burned through the air. The badger moved like a storm, fast, brutal, unstoppable. One moment it tore through armor, the next it vanished into shadows. The council's security drones tried to lock on, but their sensors failed. The creature's energy signature was human technology, encrypted, unpredictable. When silence returned, the air smelled of smoke and fear. The counselor stumbled backward, his robe scorched. "What are you?" he hissed. The badger stood over the girl, chest rising and falling. It turned its glowing eyes toward the counselor. The translation implant caught the vibration and turned it into sound. "Over my body," it growled. Every translator in the room repeated the phrase in 100 alien tongues. The words filled every mind like a thunderclap. The girl slowly got to her knees. She looked around at the chaos, the broken weapons, the shattered glass, the terrified faces. "You shouldn't have made him angry," she whispered. Outside, the planetary alarm began to howl. The council's guards were regrouping. Ships were already launching from their towers. The order had been given: kill the human, destroy the beast, but the beast was ready. When the first squad burst into the chamber, the badger leapt onto the floor, eyes burning brighter. Its armor opened like a living thing, revealing mechanical claws humming with blue light. It didn't fight to win. It fought to erase. The girl crawled toward a fallen console and smashed her palm onto a button labeled in Earth script. The floor panels trembled. The entire hall's lights dimmed as human code flooded the council's systems. Every screen showed the same words. Protocol Warbond activated. On planets across the sector, old Earth satellites woke from sleep. Hidden drones powered up. The galaxy had mocked Earth for centuries, called its beasts primitive, its children weak. But Earth remembered. The honey badger raised its head and let out a sound no translator could handle, a roar of metal and rage. The shockwave shattered the chamber windows, sending alien delegates fleeing into the corridors. The girl touched its side gently. "Let's go home." It looked at her and blinked, its eyes softening for a brief second. Then it turned again toward the smoke and death and started walking forward step by step, into the heart of the council's city. The war had begun, not because humanity planned it, but because the galaxy forgot one rule: you can threaten a human. You can threaten a world, but you never ever threaten a human child. Smoke still drifted from the ruins of the council hall when the alarms began to echo through the city. Sirens wailed in every tower. Patrol drones zipped through the metal streets like hornets searching for a target. The people of the capital, thousands of alien species, had never seen fear move so fast. The girl ran. Her small feet hit the metal floor hard, echoing between the tall walls. Behind her, the honey badger followed, its armor plates glowing faintly in the darkness. Each of its steps left faint sparks as if the floor itself couldn't handle its power. Outside, ships began to lift off. The sky was filled with blue trails of energy. The council had called for total lockdown. Every channel repeated the same command: terminate the human. Capture the beast alive for dissection. The girl stopped near a shattered transport tube and pressed her hand against the control pad. It flickered, half dead, but her voice was steady. Come on, please work. The badger growled low, scanning the air with its sensors. From the far end of the corridor came the metallic clicking of boots. Soldiers. Their armor gleamed silver, and their rifles glowed with red plasma cores. The tube door opened just in time. The girl jumped inside. The badger followed, its claws scratching sparks against the floor. The doors closed, and the transport dropped into motion, fast enough to make her stomach twist. She sat down, breathing hard. They'll chase us! The badger tilted its head slightly, then growled in a tone that almost sounded like speech. The translator built into her wristband caught a fragment. Let them! The city outside sped by, a blur of neon and steel. Flames rose in the distance where council troops tried to contain the fires from the hall. Everywhere the human names spread like wildfire. News networks screamed about rebellion. Some called her the weapon child. Others whispered about Earth's revenge. She turned to the badger. Why did you come back for me? The creature didn't answer right away. Its blue eyes dimmed slightly like it was remembering something old. Finally, it spoke through the translator, its voice deep and rough. Promise, her throat tightened. She remembered that day on Earth, before they took her away. The lab, the soldiers, the way the badger had pressed its paw against her hand as they separated them. She had whispered, "You'll find me again," and it had growled in answer. That was the promise. The transport slowed. The door slid open to reveal a lower district, dark alleys, flickering signs, steam pouring from the vents. The girl stepped out carefully. The badger followed, sniffing the air, its sensors lighting up. They didn't know this place, but something else did. In the shadows, a group of alien civilians watched, miners, scavengers, refugees. When they saw the human and her beast, they froze. One of them stepped forward, a tall insectoid creature with cracked armor and dull orange eyes. "You're the child from the broadcast." She didn't move. "Are you going to turn us in?" The creature's wings twitched. "No. The council took everything from us, too." For a moment, silence. Then the badger stepped closer, sniffing the air around the stranger. It didn't growl. That was enough. The insectoid waved for the others. "Come. There's an old service tunnel. The patrols won't find you there." They followed the group through narrow passageways dripping with condensation. The sound of distant explosions echoed from above. The galaxy's greatest government was falling apart, and all because of a single human child and her impossible guardian. In the tunnel, the girl found a small console still running on backup power. She touched the screen. A map appeared, a map of the capital and its orbital fleet. She whispered, "If we can reach the docks, maybe we can get off-world." The badger's eyes narrowed. It studied the map, then tapped its claw against a blinking point in the center, the main command tower of the council fleet. The translator spoke. "War begins there." The girl looked up at it. "You want to attack them?" The badger gave a slow nod. Before she could answer, the tunnel lights flickered. The sound of boots thundered from behind them. Drones swarmed through the air, their red lights cutting through the dark. The badger moved first. Its armor unfolded again, releasing shockwaves that threw dust from the walls. The first drone exploded before it even fired. The second was torn apart by its claws. The aliens ducked for cover as plasma bolts filled the tunnel. The girl ran to the console and slammed her hand down again. "Override security." Somehow the system obeyed. Doors slammed shut behind them, trapping the soldiers in the collapsing tunnel. The roof gave way with a roar, and flames swallowed the entrance. When silence returned, the girl and the badger stood alone in the red glow of emergency lights. The air smelled like ozone and smoke. She looked up at her companion, trembling but trying to smile. "You really don't know when to stop, do you?" The badger leaned its head slightly as if amused. Then it spoke again, softly through the translator. "They started it." Outside, the first council fleet lifted from the planet's surface, engines roaring. Above the clouds, hundreds of ships formed into battle lines. Orders echoed across channels. Prepare for planetary strike. The girl and the honey badger stepped into the open air, the city burning behind them. Somewhere above, the stars flickered through the smoke. The war hadn't been declared yet, but it was already here. The sky above the capital was no longer blue. It burned red. Warships floated through the clouds like blades of light, their weapons aimed at the planet below. The council had lost patience. They would destroy the entire district if that's what it took to erase the girl and her beast. Far below, the girl and the honey badger moved through the wreckage of a transport yard. Smoke curled between metal pillars. Burnt ships lay half buried in dust. The air was thick with static, the hum of charging plasma cannons far above. The girl's voice cracked. "They're really going to do it. They'll destroy everything just to kill us." The honey badger paused, its glowing eyes scanning the sky. Its armor vibrated with faint sound, a pulse that answered the distant ships. Then it turned its head toward her. The translator whispered, "Let them try." She managed a weak smile. "You sound like every human who ever got in trouble." The badger blinked, then began to dig into the ground. Sparks flew as its claws struck buried metal. Within seconds, it uncovered a hatch marked with Earth's insignia, a faded blue circle with a white line through it. The symbol of the Terran Protectorate, long thought extinct. The girl knelt beside it, her eyes wide. "This shouldn't be here." The badger pressed its paw against a small scanner. The machine hummed, lights turning green. With a hiss, the hatch opened. Inside was a hidden chamber, dark, silent, filled with machines that still carried the scent of old human engineering. Screens flickered on. Holograms appeared. The girl gasped as an image of a man shimmered before them, wearing an ancient Terran uniform. His voice, rough and calm, filled the room. "If you're hearing this, humanity has fallen, or it's about to rise again." Project Warbond was built for one purpose: to protect any human blood that still beats among the stars. "You are not alone." The girl's hands shook. "Project Warbond," she whispered. "That's what you activated." The honey badger gave a short growl. The translator turned it into words. "Defense network." "Still alive." She stepped closer to the console. "Can we reach it?" The screens changed, showing maps of orbiting satellites and deep space signals, all marked Terran. Dozens were still active, scattered across nearby systems, hidden, waiting for a command. The badger's armor lit brighter. "We can!" Above them, the sound of thunder rolled. The first plasma barrage hit the surface. Buildings vanished in white fire. The shockwave threw debris into the air like a storm. The girl screamed, shielding her face. The badger covered her with its armored body, taking the impact head-on. When the light faded, half the city was gone. The badger rose slowly, smoke rising from its armor, eyes still burning. The girl's cheeks were streaked with tears and ash. "They'll kill everyone just because of me." The badger looked down at her, voice low and steady. "Then we stopped them. They climbed out through the ruins and into the open again." The city around them was broken, but in the distance the council tower still stood, its golden spire glowing under the burning sky. From its top, command signals pulsed through space, directing fleets, summoning more ships. The girl stared at it. "If we destroy that tower?" The badger finished her thought. "Their fleet goes blind," she nodded. "Then that's our target." They began to move through the ruins, every step heavier with dust and silence. As they passed through shattered streets, survivors began to appear. Aliens, scavengers, wounded soldiers who had lost everything. Some watched in fear. Others whispered. A child with scaled skin pointed at the girl. That's her, the human. An older alien knelt beside the child and said softly, "She's not the one to fear. It's what follows her." By the time the girl reached the edge of the tower district, she realized they weren't alone anymore. Behind her, hundreds of refugees had begun to follow, some carrying weapons, some nothing but hope. The badger turned, looked at them, then at her. She swallowed hard. "They think we can win." The badger's response was almost a sigh. "Then we must." They reached the outer gates as the fleet's bombardment paused. The council guards regrouped at the tower's base, rows of armored soldiers and hovering drones. One of them raised a megaphone. "Surrender the human. The creature will be contained unharmed." The girl looked at the badger. "Do we ever surrender?" The creature tilted its head, eyes glowing brighter. "Never," the first guard fired. The badger moved like lightning. Plasma bolts hit its armor and burst harmlessly. It leapt into the air, crashed down among the soldiers, and tore through their line like thunder through glass. The crowd behind the girl shouted, charging forward. The streets became a battlefield. Sparks filled the air. The tower's golden walls cracked under explosions. The girl ran through it all, clutching a device she had taken from the old human chamber, a small transmitter with a single red button. As she neared the base of the tower, she turned back. The honey badger stood over the fallen guards, breathing heavy, smoke rising from its armor. She held up the transmitter. "You said Project Warbond can still hear us?" It nodded once. "Then let's make them listen." She pressed the button. A wave of blue light spread across the sky. Every ship in orbit paused. Communication lines flickered. Then, one by one, massive silhouettes began to appear among the stars, ancient Terran war drones awakening from their slumber, responding to the signal of the last surviving human child. The council fleet hesitated. Commanders shouted orders. The drones didn't wait. Beams of white light split the darkness, cutting through enemy ships like paper. The orbital silence shattered into chaos. Below, the girl stared upward as the heavens burned. The honey badger stepped beside her. The translator hummed softly. "War has begun." She didn't speak. She just nodded, her eyes reflecting the fire above. The sky was a storm of fire. Council fleets burned above the planet like dying stars, their formation breaking as ancient Terran drones cut through them with cold precision. The once proud capital world, seat of galactic law, now trembled under the return of something long forgotten, Earth's wrath. The girl stood on the tower's remains, her hair whipping in the hot wind. The transmitter in her hand glowed faintly, still linked to the Terran network that had just awakened after centuries of silence. Below her, the honey badger crouched low, armor steaming, eyes fixed upward as explosions painted the sky. The translator crackled. "Signal spreading. Terran systems. Responding." The girl wiped dust from her face. "How many?" "Enough." The next moment, the tower shook. The badger leapt and pulled her down just as a missile struck nearby, blowing half the roof away. They fell through shattered glass and metal into a wide chamber below. The sound of alarms was deafening. The girl coughed, struggling to her feet. "They won't stop until we're both dead." The badger scanned the room. Holographic screens flickered to life, showing council fleets retreating toward the outer moons. One ship, larger than the rest, remained in position, black, sharp-edged, its hull covered in crimson markings. The flagship of the council commander. It was gathering power. The badger's armor shifted, releasing blue light as it connected to the human signal grid. "They are charging the main cannon." "Planet killer." The girl's face went pale. "That would wipe out everything here, civilians too." "Yes," she clenched her fists. "Then we stop them." The badger looked toward the sky. The reflection of the orbiting flagship burned in its glowing eyes. It turned back to her. "You'll need to guide the Terran fleet." "I'll draw fire." She shook her head violently. "No, you can't. You are command." "I am shield," she wanted to argue, but there was no time. The floor trembled again as the planet's defense towers began to melt under bombardment. The badger crouched and extended a clawed hand toward her. "Trust." She climbed onto its armored back. The plating adjusted around her like a living thing, enclosing her safely as it sprinted through the tower's corridors and out onto the open landing bay. Outside, chaos ruled. Fires raged across the skyline. Refugees ran as council ships strafed the streets. The Badger leapt across collapsed bridges, moving with impossible strength. Every time a drone fired, it responded faster, crushing, tearing, deflecting bolts with bursts of blue energy. Through her wristband, the girl linked to the Terran network. Her voice was trembling but clear. "This is Human ID 719. Command signal recognized. Activate all warbond units. Target coordinates uploaded. Across orbit, massive drones turned in unison. Their silent motion synchronized like an ancient army waking from its grave. She whispered, "Execute strike pattern Omega." The sky answered. Hundreds of white beams pierced the clouds, hitting the Council fleet in perfect sequence. The impact waves rippled through space, turning enemy ships into expanding rings of molten debris, but the flagship survived. It powered through the chaos, energy fields glowing crimson. The girl stared upward. "It's heading for us." The Badger stopped in the middle of a burning bridge, claws sinking into the metal. "Then this is where it ends." A deep hum filled the air as the flagship's weapon core charged. The clouds turned blood red. Lightning danced across the sky. The honey badger looked at the child and then back at the heavens. "Stay behind me," the girl shook her head. "We do this together." The first beam descended, a column of burning plasma wider than a city street. The badger roared and raised its armored claws. Energy shields flared, bending the beam around them, but the ground cracked beneath their feet. The bridge started to collapse. The girl reached forward, slamming the transmitter's override command. "Redirect defense satellites!" The sky above them brightened again as dormant Terran satellites aligned themselves with the Badger's armor signal. One after another, their energy cores locked into synchronization. The Badger's entire body glowed white-hot. Its system screamed. The armor plates split open like wings of light, channeling the combined power upward. It released it all at once. The counterblast shot through the sky, a beam of blue-white energy that met the flagship's plasma weapon head-on. For a moment, space itself seemed to hold its breath. Then the collision erupted, splitting the clouds and shattering the sound barrier across the planet. When the light faded, the flagship was gone, reduced to fragments raining down like fire. The girl opened her eyes slowly. Everything was quiet except for the faint crackle of flames. The honey badger stood still, armor smoking, pieces falling off. She slid off its back and touched its side. "You did it!" It turned its head weakly toward her, eyes dimming. "Victory." Confirmed. Her throat tightened. "Don't you dare shut down." "Not now." The badger blinked slowly. "Rest. Temporary," she smiled through her tears. "Good." In the distance, Terran drones began to descend, scanning the surface for survivors. The Council's once mighty city lay in ruins. The war was far from over, but for the first time in centuries, the stars had witnessed something the galaxy had forgotten: human defiance. The girl sat beside her companion as the smoke thinned and the first dawn broke over the battlefield. The honey badger's eyes flickered faintly, watching the sunrise. The translator spoke its final words for the day. "They will come again." The girl nodded softly. "And we'll be ready." The world that once belonged to the Council now smoldered under a red dawn. Towers that had stood for 1,000 years lay broken. The air was filled with the soft crackle of fires and the quiet hum of Terran drones drifting through the ruins like silent guardians. The human girl sat near the edge of a shattered platform, her small hands clasped together, staring at the horizon. Her face was streaked with ash, but her eyes burned with something stronger than fear. She could see hundreds of survivors below, alien citizens moving carefully through the ruins, helping each other, searching for the lost. They looked up at her sometimes, whispering. The whispers spread faster than smoke. They say she's human. They say the beast follows her. They say the galaxy will never be the same. The honey badger rested beside her, armor cracked, energy core pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. Its once bright eyes glowed a softer blue now. The translator on her wrist hummed quietly. "Systems." At 30%, she leaned against it. "You need rest." "Later." "Always later," she murmured with a tired smile. High above, the remains of the Council fleet drifted in silence, their communications filled with panic. Across the galaxy, worlds once loyal to the Council began to question their allegiance. Every broadcast, every news channel carried the same image. A small human child standing in the ruins of the Council's capital, guarded by a glowing metallic creature that had defied a fleet alone. In hidden corners of the galaxy, people began to move. Slaves, soldiers, and outlaws all whispering the same name. The Child of Earth, and beside her, the Badger of War. The girl turned to her companion. "They think we started this." The honey badger's voice came out low and rough. "We didn't start it. We finish it." Before she could reply, a faint crackle came from her wristband. The Terran network's voice broke through the static. Signal confirmed. "Command unit alive. Reinforcements en route from Sector Orion. Estimated arrival 40 hours. Her heart skipped. "There are more?" "Yes," said the Badger. "Humans survived. Somewhere." Tears filled her eyes, but she wiped them away quickly. "Then we find them." A shadow moved behind the smoke. Several aliens stepped forward, those who had fought beside her during the assault. Their leader was the tall insectoid miner from the tunnels, his armor scorched but his voice strong. "Human," he said, lowering his head. "Our homes are gone. Our leaders are dead, but we are free. What do we do now?" She didn't know what to say. She was just a child. But when she looked at the honey badger, she saw the answer reflected in its glowing eyes. She stood slowly and faced the crowd. "We rebuild," she said quietly, "and we fight back. Not just for humans, for everyone they tried to control." The aliens exchanged glances. The miner nodded once. "Then we follow you." The badger growled softly, almost approving. As the day passed, more ships landed. Small rebel craft, scavenger transports, and damaged council vessels now under new command. They came carrying people from 100 species, drawn by one rumor, that the council's rule had ended on this world. By nightfall, the city was alive again, not with fear, but with purpose. Workshops blazed to life, drones were repaired, old weapons were scavenged from the wreckage. And in the center of it all, under the broken tower where the council once ruled, the girl and her honey badger stood side by side, watching the birth of something new. The translator hummed softly. "They will come again. Bigger fleets, stronger weapons." "I know," she said, her voice firm now. "But they don't understand something." "What is that?" She turned toward the sky, her expression calm and certain. "Humans don't fight for orders. We fight for family." The badger's armor clicked once, a metallic sound that somehow felt like laughter. Far away, deep in the void, a massive council dreadnought stirred. Its command deck glowed crimson as the Supreme Chancellor watched the reports. "One child," he hissed, "one animal. They humiliate us before the galaxy." He turned to his officers. "Some in every world still loyal. We will make an example of Earth's legacy." But in the ruins of the capital, the girl had already moved to the next step. She stood inside the recovered command center, patching the old Terran network into the city's systems. Maps and data flickered before her, routes, colonies, hidden relay points. She could see how far humanity's forgotten code had spread. "They built this to protect us," she whispered. "Now it's our turn to protect others." The honey badger stood beside her, silent, scanning the data feeds. "War is coming again," she nodded. "Then we take it to them first." Outside, the night burned with new fires. But for the first time in generations, they weren't the fires of destruction. They were the fires of rebellion. And across the stars, the galaxy began to whisper a new name. The Warborn. The stars over the ruined capital burned brighter than ever. For the first time in centuries, the night sky shimmered with human satellites, Terran drones, and rebel ships working together. The galaxy had changed, and everyone knew it. On the highest tower that still stood, the human child looked toward the horizon. Her face was calm, but her eyes held a storm. The honey badger stood beside her, armor repaired, glowing faintly blue in the pale light. Together they watched as the last survivors prepared for what they knew was coming. The Council's revenge. Their fleet appeared without warning. 1,000 ships emerged from hyperspace, each larger than the ones before. Their black hulls reflected no light, their cannons charged with plasma bright enough to paint the entire sky red. The Supreme Chancellor himself led the armada. This time he wasn't sending orders. He was coming to finish it himself. On the ground, the rebels scrambled. Sirens screamed. Engines roared. Terran drones lifted into the air, forming protective walls around the city. The girl stood motionless, clutching the transmitter that had started it all. The honey badger looked at her, the translator humming quietly. "We can't hold forever," she nodded. "We don't need forever. We just need long enough," the badger tilted its head. "For what?" Her small hand tightened on the transmitter. "For hope to spread." The first blasts struck. The sky became fire. Entire districts vanished under orbital bombardment, the air filled with thunder and falling light. Yet through the chaos, the humans' machines stood firm. The old Terran satellites responded again, locking onto the enemy fleet. "Defense grid online," the network whispered. Beams of light rose from the surface, punching holes through the clouds and slicing into the massive warships. But there were too many. For every council ship that fell, 10 more took its place. The planet trembled. The girl turned to the honey badger. "They're targeting the command center." "I'll hold the line. You won't survive that." The badger looked at her, eyes glowing with steady calm. "Doesn't matter." "You will." She shook her head violently. "No, I'm not leaving you." It stepped closer and lowered its head until its armored face was level with hers. For the first time, its growl sounded almost gentle. Promise kept. Her breath caught. It was the same thing it had said long ago, before the war, before the council. Back when she was just a scared child in a lab, she understood. The badger turned away, armor shifting as energy built beneath its plates. Blue light pulsed through every seam. Then it launched forward, faster than any living thing should move. The ground shattered under its steps. It leapt onto the outer wall as the first wave of enemy dropships descended. Dozens of alien soldiers poured out, their weapons blazing. The honey badger met them head-on, tearing through metal and flame, its claws glowing like stars. Every strike sent shockwaves through the air. The rebels saw it and rallied behind the sight. They screamed the same words through the smoke. "For the child! For Earth!" Above, the Council fleet fired its final volley, a focused planetary beam meant to erase everything. The honey badger looked up, its armor broken and smoking, and let out a roar so loud it shook the clouds. The old Terran satellites heard it. Every dormant drone, every hidden orbital cannon, every fragment of humanity's forgotten technology lit up in response. The grid activated in full force for the first time in centuries. The planet exploded with light. A wall of energy surged upward, meeting the Council's beam halfway. The collision split the sky open, turning night into blinding white. When it cleared, nothing moved. The Council's fleet was gone, burned to ash in orbit. The sound faded slowly into silence. In the ruins, the girl pushed herself up, coughing through the smoke. "Badger?" she called weakly. There was no answer. She stumbled through the debris until she found it, half buried under broken stone and twisted metal. Its armor was cracked, its blue light fading, but its eyes still glowed faintly when it saw her. She dropped to her knees, tears streaking her face. "You did it. You saved everyone," the translator clicked softly. "You safe?" "Yes," she whispered, holding its paw tightly. "I'm safe." The glow in its eyes flickered one last time. "Good. Then, I rest." The light went out. The world was silent again. The wind carried the sound of distant fires and the quiet hum of machines shutting down. The girl sat beside her companion until dawn touched the ruins. The rising sun turned the broken city gold. When the survivors gathered, they found her still there, small, covered in soot, her hand resting on the cold metal of the creature that had defied an empire. No one spoke. They didn't need to. That day, a legend was born. They buried the honey badger under the heart of the new city that rose from the ruins. The girl grew older, her name lost to time, but her story remained. the child who stood against the council, the guardian beast who promised war for her sake. And across the stars, wherever humans or their allies walked, one phrase echoed through the ages. You can threaten a world. You can burn a galaxy, but you never threaten a human child.